Okay, we are Pirkei Avos. Hannah, I'm going to hire you soon, full time. Let me give you for today. You have a different job.
Right.
Just take me too long, we'll lose too much precious time. Maybe later I'll start doing it myself. Okay, thank you.
I don't know why, but I love doing it.
Okay, so we are here in Pirkei Avos, and we did Mishnah Ches, Mishnah Tes, and now we're up to Mishnah Yud. It's a continuation, because it's all about the same person, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who I told you that he was the leader of Jewry, the generation that witnessed the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. And he was like Moshe Rabbeinu, he lived to 120. And if not for him, Torah would have, God forbid, been forgotten. So he was a great sage. He had thousands, tens of thousands of students, but he had 5 students, which were his main students and his greatest students. And with them and through them, he spread Torah to everybody else. So the first Mishnah was about, don't give yourself credit for learning Torah. In other words, don't let the Torah study make you feel arrogant. And he was the one to say it because he had vast, unlimited knowledge of Torah himself. I'm sorry about that. Okay. Yeah. The second Mishnah was about his 5 students, and he described them a little bit, each one. One of them that I skipped yesterday, I said I'll go back to it. And that was, again, when he spoke about their qualities and why they were superior to everyone else. One of them was superior because he retained every ounce of information that went into his head. The other one was superior in terms of his fear of God. The other one was superior in terms of his going out of the way, going beyond the letter of the law. And then the 5th one was superior in the sense that he was like an ever-increasing wellspring, that he's extremely creative in terms of his depth of understanding. Deeper and deeper insight keeps coming to him in his knowledge of Torah. With one of the names in the middle, his name was Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya. What does he say about him? Asher Yiladate, fortunate is the one that gave birth to him, praising his mother. So Mepharshim say, how does that come in here? And there's more details to this, but I'm just going to mention the general idea that the mother, in this case, was the one responsible directly for his reaching these great heights. What did his mother do? There are 2 opinions, and they're probably both things happened. One opinion says that when she was expecting this baby, she went to different tzaddikim, righteous people, to get a blessing from them that he should grow up to be a great Torah scholar. The other opinion is that when he was a baby, as an infant, she put him in a crib or whatever they had in those days, and she kept it in the yeshiva where the scholars and the Torah sages were studying Torah. So I'm sure it doesn't mean that he was listening in to the conversations when he was 2 months old or 3 months old, but it means that he absorbed so much holiness, which was present in that room, and that was instrumental in him growing up to be a great tzaddik, which is something where you learn a lot about in Jewish home. In fact, both opinions are things that we learn about in a Jewish home. One is that education of a child doesn't begin when they become 9 or 10 or bas mitzvah or bar mitzvah. It begins when they're an infant, and that has an influence. And the other point is, according to the other opinion, it begins even before they're born, when they're still in their mother's womb. But now, Mishnah 10, let's do the Mishnah 10 together. He said to them, he spoke to his 5 students, and he said to them, go out and see which is a good way which a man should cleave. In other words, what's the right thing for a person to focus on? Now, they're all going to give good answers. So what is the question? And in fact, why do they all give different answers? So generally speaking, the way it's understood, again, when you come to Pirkei Avos, you have dozens and dozens of commentary and different interpretations and ways of explaining it. They're all true, just from different angles. But generally speaking, it's basically saying that there's so much to work with when you talk about character traits. There's so many things that we need to refine and we need to enhance, or sometimes things we need to discipline. And it could be very confusing in terms of, so where do I begin? Again, we can't work on everything at once. We know that if a person would try to change everything at once, it'll just explode in our face. It won't work. It'll be too much pressure and the person won't be able to accomplish it. Which means not only they won't be able to accomplish all the things, they won't be able to accomplish even one thing because it's going to be too much to take on at once. So you have to do bit by bit, but where do you start? Where do you begin? There could be many approaches to where to begin. But it looks like in this mission is saying one of the approaches is choose something which this is sort of so general, so basic, so fundamental, that if this would be in place, it'll be much easier to work with everything else. It's a little bit like, or the same idea as military strategy. You know, when two nations, two countries are fighting against each other, they don't just, shoot rockets and missiles indiscriminately. They have a plan. At least they should have a plan, not like Russia. The plan should be with strategy. Strategy means that you aim for things that, strategically speaking, this will lead to sort of the victory. So they aim towards bridges, towards the communication. Once the communication is destroyed, you weaken the entire army. Once their bridges are destroyed, which is the same idea, you've weakened the entire army. That's even more important than aiming at a single individual soldier. So the same thing spiritually, what's the strategy? What's the best thing to work on that if this is sort of accomplished and achieved, it'll be so much easier to get to other character traits. And the same as in the reverse, which negative character trait is so fundamental, so crucial, that if I'm able to discipline that, it'll help me discipline everything else. And there are 5 opinions. So number one, we would understand each person gave an opinion that resonated with them and their personality. But this is not a personal thing about this person or that person. This is a book of Torah for all Jewish people. So I guess we can understand from this that these are 5 paths that all Yidden, whoever is going to serve Hashem, is going to fall under one of these 5 categories. What should be more suitable for them? What are the 5 groups? He said to them, go out and see what is the good way to which a man should cleave. Rabbi Elazar, these are the same 5 sages again. He said the main thing is a good eye. Rabbi Yeshua said the main thing is to have a good friend. Rabbi Majeski said the main thing is to have a good neighbor. Rabbi Shimon said the main thing is to have this ability or this focus to foresee the consequences of my actions. When I do something, not just judge by what I'm doing now, but what would be the result in the long run. And Rabbi Elazar said the main thing is a good heart. These were the 5 opinions. I will soon explain them. So Rabbi Yechon Zakai, the Rebbe of all these 5 students, said to them, I prefer the words of Rabbi Elazar ben Aruch, which is the last one. For your words are included in his. In other words, all the other fats, is as if to say these 5 are the most general things that one should work on. And out of the 5, the 5th one is the most general of all 5. Then we continue. Then he said to them, go out and see which is a negative path for which a man should distance himself. Again, you have to distance himself from anything negative. But what's the thing to focus on, a sort of negative character trait or negative something that if you improve this or you don't allow this negative thing to be there, this will help you regarding all other negative things. Again, each one says the same thing in reverse. Rabbi Eliezer says evil eye. Again, his opinion was a good eye. So a bad eye is the reverse. What's a good eye? What's a bad eye? We'll soon talk about that. Rabbi Yeshua said a bad friend. Rabbi Yossi says a bad neighbor. Rabbi Shimon said someone who borrows but doesn't pay back the loan that they borrowed. And he elaborates on this. One who borrows from his fellow man is akin to one who borrows from Hashem. Because it says in the Torah, a wicked man borrows and will not repay, but a righteous man acts graciously and gives. I must explain this because this also doesn't fit in. We're talking about character traits and a certain approach to life. So just borrowing is a certain detail. But if you go back to a moment, you see, what did he say in the positive? He said that you should foresee the consequence. In other words, an amazing character trait is that before I do something, I stop and think, what will be the end result of this in the long run? Right now, I'm having a good time. Right now, I'm enjoying myself. But what will be the end result of this longer? Or the same with something positive. Right now, if I do this positive thing, I might lose a lot of money. But in the long run, I might be gaining so much more. And most people do make their judgment based on the immediate. What happens now? Am I going to be happy? Or it's going to be hard for me. I'm going to be losing something, I'm going to be gaining something. But it's just like you talk about in business. When you're in business, you invest. So you just spend $10,000 because you know that by spending $10,000, at the end of the year, I'll have $100,000 in this business that I'm investing. So you're not judging it by what I'm doing now. Now I'm giving away money. But in a year from now, I'll be bringing in money. And that's how we think. That's the way we should look at life as well. So the reverse is a person who borrows and doesn't pay back. In other words, that's a classical example of someone that's judging by the present, not in the future. What happens if you borrow money and you don't pay back? So for the moment, very good. I borrowed $1,000. I don't have to pay it back. I'm doing great. I just got myself $1,000. And I'll use it for longer. I was supposed to pay back in 30 days, and I'll pay back in 6 months. So you think that you've outsmarted the other person. On the long run, you've now lost your credit. People are not going to trust you. And if people don't trust you, which means for the long run, you've lost much more. So the difference between the person that will make sure to pay back the loan on time and the person that will hold it back is this one judges things by the way they are now. And this person judges things by the way they'll be on the long run. So that's why this is the opposite of what he said before. Let's continue. Then we have Rabbi Eliezer says, before he said the best thing is to have a good heart, and the worst thing is to have levra, an evil heart. So he's saying everything revolves around the heart. And again, the Rebbe, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, what was his reaction? Raya ani, he said, I see, and I prefer the words of Rabbi Eliezer ben Aruch. I prefer his words to your words, because everything all of you say are included in his words, which means, again, the 5 things that you say are all important, and they include all other negative character traits. But this one thing, which he says about a bad heart, that includes all the 5. So I think we'll stop here, even though it's the middle of a Mishnah, and we'll go back to explain these 5 things. And for that, we'll turn to page 5 in the booklet. The question is, what is a good eye and what is a bad eye? We're not talking about physical vision. Again, we're talking about the Gemara language, the Torah language. There's a pasuk where it says, Toiv ayin hu yivarech. He who has a good eye, he will give blessing. And this is the quote that's always used in reference to this subject. And by the way, we'll see there are a few interpretations to a good eye. But one of them is that when I see another person having happiness and enjoyment, making money, being blessed, a lot of blessings in life, how does it affect me? A good eye means I'm happy for that person. A bad eye means that it bothers me to see that this person is having all these blessings. And that's what the definition of a bad eye is. Again, according to one opinion. Now we understand that human nature is a certain sort of jealousy. It's very hard to see other people succeeding, having success in a place where I'm not successful, especially. And as a result of that, sometimes people see it and they sort of swallow it. And sometimes they actually almost wish that the other person would lose their money, lose their job, lose their success, which is a very negative character trait. But that's the definition of having a bad eye or a good eye. Number 2, another interpretation is another thing which is also simple. We actually say this in davening. It's in the Shema. We say it every day. Some people say 3 or 4 times a day. And that is where it says, Lo yisasuru achrei levavchem v'achrei reichem. This is number 2 on the list. Do not go after your heart and your eyes. What does it mean by the heart and the eyes? So let's look at number 3. Number 3 is Aramaic. It comes from the Gemara. And it says these words, Eina v'liba train sirsura dechet ninu. The eyes and the heart are 2 agents of sin. Basically meaning to say, just like spies, what do spies do? They go out, spy in a country to see their weaknesses. They come back and report and they say, okay, we can go attack them from the north, from the south. That's the way to go about it. In a sense, the eyes and the heart are 2 spies that they search out negativity. They see negativity. And the way it works is the eyes see something. The heart starts beating and with excitement. And the next thing you know, the hands and the feet are doing the Avera. That's the mechanics of an Avera. The eye sees and the heart gets excited. And then the person does things which are inappropriate. So what it's basically saying is that there are things that we see, things that we hear, things that we study, and each one has its advantage, but there's a certain advantage with vision. Visual penetrates very deep. When you see something, it penetrates very deep. And in fact, for that reason, usually something that you see, even years later, you can go back and try to picture and see what it is. I can go back, who knows how many years when I was a child. I remember what my school looked like, what the house that I lived in, what it looked like, what the street looked like, not a problem. But if you ask me, do I remember exactly what I heard a few days ago, I might not remember exactly or not remember at all. There's something about vision that when you see it penetrates deeper and has more of an impact. In fact, that's probably the reason why today, with advertisement, they connect everything to vision. Things that have no connection, but they just want you to see something, unfortunately, most of the time, inappropriate, just to get you excited and to capture your attention. And like I said, it penetrates deeper, and then you You'll remember this advertisement that you saw. When you hear things, it also is something which you, of course, you internalize it, but not in the same way like vision. Hearing has different advantages, but not like vision. So the Torah says specifically, in other words, if a person would hear about something which is inappropriate, and that might make them want to get involved in that, you can't compare it to when they see something which is inappropriate, and the attraction to that is so much stronger. So it means that from a Torah perspective, we are cautioned with our vision, that a person's vision should be directed towards positive things and to avoid negative things, because it has a strong positive effect and also has a very strong negative effect on a person. In the recent years, this is not something which is absolute halacha. It's a custom, and it's also a little bit going beyond the requirement of halacha. But in the recent years, for example, the Rebbe came out with a campaign and said how it's so important to educate children at a very young age. Children in their rooms, usually you hang up things on the wall, signs, papers, pictures. And people hang up all sorts of things. You can hang up pictures of animals, pictures of lions, pictures of whatever you like. And the Rebbe pointed out that even though in halacha you're not allowed to eat food which is a treif animal, but everything else is not treif. You're allowed to look at a treif animal. But being that we're living in a time today where we see children are growing up with so many issues and difficulties, and therefore we have to make an extra effort that they should grow up more pure. So the Rebbe said, to see an animal in the street or in the zoo, that's not a problem, but something hanging in my walls, in my room, which I'm seeing constantly, if it's something not kosher, to avoid doing that. Why? Because vision has an effect. If this is a not kosher animal and there's something impure about it, and then I'm constantly looking at it, it could have an effect on the child in terms of planting sort of something impure in the child. But of course, this is something that applies to everyone, to adults as well. And it means that we have to discipline our vision. I didn't put it down here, probably because I forgot, but there's in the Shulchan Aruch, there's a paragraph that the whole entire Shulchan Aruch begins with that paragraph. And that is where it says you should be strong like a lion, quick as a deer, bold as a leopard, and then quick as an eagle. What? Swift as an eagle. So what's the difference between swift and fast as a deer? In other words, these four animals represent certain character traits, and we should aim towards acquiring these character traits, to do things quickly, not to procrastinate, to be strong and overcome temptation, to be bold and not to be embarrassed of doing the right thing. But what does it mean to be swift like an eagle? We already said to be quick like a deer. A deer runs fast, and we should run fast and do good things, and not to delay, not to procrastinate. So one of the ways that it's explained is referring, I don't know why an eagle. There must be a reason. I probably read it, but it being that it's not like vision, I actually forgot what I read. But there is a reason why an eagle, and maybe because eagles have they could see very far. So it means to be swift as an eagle, to look away from something which is inappropriate. There's also another interpretation, which is another way of saying a bad eye, which simply would mean, how do I look at things? Everything in the world is positive and there's negative. A good eye means when I look at something, I see the good in it. The example of is the glass half full or the glass is half empty? Two people are looking at the same glass, they see the same thing. Somebody walks outside like a day like yesterday and says, wow, it's so beautiful. The sun is shining. It's warm. I don't need my winter coat. It's amazing. And the next one says, yeah, but I heard tomorrow it's going to be cold. So that means both people are experiencing the same thing, but one person focuses and what registers in their head is the positive, and the other person, what registers in the negative. You look at a person. Every person has good things and bad things. There's certain people that what registers in their head are the good character traits, the good things about this person, and that's what registers, that's what they think about. And other people are the negative. I once told the story, but this is another example. I don't know if I told the story in this class, but, and actually, it's happened more than once. I'm talking about real live stories. But I once got a call from a friend because I told this friend the story. And he called me up and said, won't believe it. The same story just happened with my son. So this person lives somewhere out of town. He got off the bus and someone else gets off the bus together with him, another Jewish man. And he says to his son, could you tell me where is this in this shul? So he said, you walk straight down this way, and after that, you make a turn on the right, and then you make a turn on the left. And he says, in fact, I'm actually going in that direction. I'm passing that spot. So if you want, I can walk with you. He says, no, I like to walk myself. So he makes a comment, says, a Jew, I like to walk alone. So he said, a Jew is never alone. So he says, right, the Yetzer Hara is always with you. I was expecting that reaction. So one person doesn't even think twice. You're never alone means Hashem is always with you. In his head, the first thing that came to mind was the Yetzer Hara is always with you. So what?
Kind of scary that he says that.
I guess it's a person that's very focused on his Yetzer Hara and getting rid of the Yetzer Hara. He's so much Yetzer Hara that when he hears something like that, immediately ring, Yetzer Hara registers. So when you look at people, when you look at things in life, there's always positive and there's negative. You look at certain things that are happening. Sometimes, like someone once told me, he had a certain condition, a medical condition. And it's a nuisance. Every day he has to remember to take a certain medicine. And for the rest of his life, he always have to take this medicine. This medicine prevents this condition from getting worse, and he's doing fine. He's healthy. And he said it's a nuance, but when I remind myself that my grandmother had the same condition, and unfortunately the medicine wasn't around in those days, and as a result of that, she became blind in her old age. And thank God I have a medicine, so big deal. Every day I have to take the medication. Another person would just say, it's a nuisance, I can't take it, this is ridiculous, why does it have to happen to me? Which means two people looking at the same thing, you can either see the positive or the negative. So this applies to everything across the board. And I guess as a Yid, being that we believe in Hashem, and we believe that Hashem is the creator of everything, and his vitality, his life force, his energy is in everything, so there is good in everything. In a certain way, recognize the good in things is also recognize the godliness in things, the godliness in people, the godliness in situations. And when a person recognizes that, that'll lead them also to have a much better, positive life. So this is the meaning of another statement. The number 4 is also in Pirkei Avos, but in a different part, where it says the evil eye, the evil inclination, which is the Yetzer Hara, and hatred of one person to another. These are 3 things that drive a person out of this world. It means it really robs them of a life. There's another term when you talk about a bad eye or evil eye is number 5. And that's Ayin Hara. And by the way, to make you aware, there's brachas which we make every single day in the morning, every day in the morning. A sitter, anybody have a sitter here?
That we are safe from the bad.
Right.
Yeah.
We ask Hashem in the morning, a lot of these things we mentioned here, it's one of our prayers on a daily basis. Let it be your will, Hashem, that we should be protected from, and we mentioned a bad person, a bad friend, a bad neighbor, and a bad eye. So one interpretation could be a bad eye, meaning I should have a good eye, but it also means Ein Hara. We find this in the Torah. This is not superstition, it's in the Torah. There's a place in the Torah, which is a parsha called Ki Sisa, where Moshe is told by Hashem to count the Jewish people. But how should he count them? Not by numbers. They should all give a coin and then count the coins. And Rashi says, because if you count with the numbers, you might cause an Ein Hara. Yes, Chazal.
Actually, in today's Chumash portion, I don't do Chumash. It actually mentions the Ein Hara in the pasuk.
By Joseph.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Excellent. Good observation. So when you do Chitas today, you'll read all about it. But the question is also, what does it mean when it says about Joseph? It says both things. Number one, that he's someone that a bad eye means like this: when someone else says, wow, this guy has so much blessing, it's so amazing, look how big they are, look how rich they are, look how this they are. This kind of talk could put the opposite of blessing into that person's possession. I know people say, but that's not fair. It's true, it's not fair, but it's like saying if someone slaps me in the face and it hurts me, it's not fair. Why should I be hurting because he chose to do something bad? It's a bad thing to talk that way about another person. But it says in the Torah that we don't count people for that reason. We'll say, wow, there are 100 people, there are 1,000 people. We count different ways. Even in a shul, when they need 10 people for a minyan, what they do is they count a pasuk. There's a pasuk which we have in davening. Hashi es amecha, uvarich es nechosecha, urei v'naseh mado elam. So it has 10 words. You go Hashi es amecha, uvarich es nechosecha. And if you stop, there's no more people. You don't have 10. So you don't count. So therefore, there's something about an evil eye, meaning not to look at other people with greed, with jealousy, and not to chas v'shalom do something like that. Now, there's some communities of people very much into protecting themselves. They're very obsessed with this. They have like 5 fingers, a red thing around your band, around your wrist, a lot of different remedies, so to speak, according to Kabbalah or something. I think the Rebbe's approach is, and it's based on what says in Gemara. The Gemara says if someone doesn't pay attention to it, it'll do no harm. So getting obsessed with these things, who knows, someone's giving me Ein Hara, that itself is like drawing it upon yourself. So it's something which we learn about, it's in the Mishnah, but it's not something which we focus on and get obsessed with. Okay, this is the eye, and then we'll go into the other thing in the Mishnah next week. Okay, on this.
If someone said something though to your face, I need to really either say what you just said, this person is so blessed or something. That's why we say these phrases, right?
You say Baruch Hashem.
Right.
But there is you have people talking, say she has 10 children, can I know her? Yeah, means by saying it, nothing shouldn't do any harm. I got your message.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay.
It's okay.
Yes.
I've got a question. Okay.
For a change.
So in the beginning of your class, right, we're learning about the whole Mordecai thing, and how there's a set, like you descended from people, but also how their souls are reincarnations. Like you said, how Taman's soul was Esau and Mordecai, Jacob's, right? Is what she was saying. And I'm confused, and I was told to ask you, okay, I know that Judaism at that time was defined by practice, right? So really like the laws of the Torah yet, but I'm still confused because I thought the whole point of Esau, yeah. I thought the whole point of of Esau was like he does have a Jewish soul and he did have the potential to like be good, but God gave him like a lot of struggles and like he went towards the bad path. Like Leah had the potential change into that, right? So I thought that he was Jewish, right? So how can someone who's Jewish be reincarnated into Haman who's like not Jewish and who's bad? Like I don't understand how that works. Or is Haman secretly Jewish? Like, I'm very confused.
It's a good question, but maybe it has to do with the fact that he himself is actually considered Jewish because his mother was Jewish. No, Esau. His mother was Jewish, his father was Jewish, but his children weren't Jewish. He brought children into the world, not just children, but nations of people who are not Jewish. So it could be that because of that, the fact that the Jew, part of the soul could come